Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to be teaching you guys how to mix mid-tempo music, new house, whatever you want to call it. It's the genre played by Rezz, 1788L. It's a really new and upcoming genre, and there hasn't been a lot of videos made on it, but it's gaining so much popularity that, you know, it's kind of crazy at this point at, you know, where this new genre is getting to. So in this video I'm just going to be teaching you how to mix it. There aren't a lot of tutorials on it, and it doesn't really seem that a lot of the DJs like Rezz really actually mix their music live on stage. It seems to be really kind of, you know, pre-recorded, preset, which, you know, is common in the industry. But anyways, it's still possible to mix this music. Anyways, I'm going to be showing you guys how to mix it. So I have my first track just set over here. I'm going to let it play from the kind of build up and the drop of the second part of the track, so the second drop, and then I'm just going to be mixing in my track. Now for this genre, it's really bass heavy. The kick drum is really hard, so absolutely we're going to be taking down the low frequency of it so that, you know, they're not conflicting in the mix. Because say if I have both of my lows up and I start, you know, mixing in my second track, the bass and, you know, the kick drums are really going to be fighting over the mix, and it's just going to sound really muddy, and it's just going to basically evaporate any kick that there's any kick in the mix. It's just going to be a complete mess. So 100% you're going to need to take down the low frequencies. This is a really heavy low frequency kind of a genre. It's not really focused on the more mid and high frequencies, but it's especially focused on more of the low frequencies. Anyways, so going from the build up and into the drop, I'm just going to be mixing it in like I normally would house music, but just keeping in mind that my low frequency is going to be obviously turned down. And when I'm going to be transitioning out from the first track into the second one, I'm going to be applying an echo filter, which is, you know, a really useful technique for this kind of transition. And especially because this genre doesn't really have any big breaks where there's a lot going on. These are more kind of minimal sounds where, you know, there might be some far off distant sounds in the break. It's not really a more melodic sounding genre. It's more, you know, especially based on the drop and just the bass of it. Using an echo filter to transition out of it and have a little bit of more transition out of the mix is especially useful for this kind of genre. So anyways, I'm going to be starting off with this first track and just mixing it in with the second track. So both of them are 100 BPM. This genre is obviously really based on either 100 BPM or 170, 180, somewhere around there. Have both of them at the same genre. Pulling up the track. So before I mix it in my headphones, I'm going to have the low frequency up. I'm going to hear it in my headphones.
The strange new world finds peace.
Turn down my low frequency.
That's pretty much it. We don't know how many of them there are. You know, when we find them.
Alright, so that was the basic gist of it. What you guys saw me do there was obviously just mix in the track, and then I had the low frequency down when I was putting up the volume fader, and then from there I continued having my low frequency down, even though the beginning part was you know, basically not bass heavy at all. It was just like a bit of sounds, which didn't really come through the mix that much. But anyways, the second part of the intro had more of a kick drum to it and a bass line. So having this low allowed the mids and the highs to come through and show that there was actually a second track coming in, while the first track was, you know, still bass heavy and going through the mix. And then I had my echo on the second track, or sorry, I had my echo on the first track, and what I did was I started echoing it out around 1 bar or 4 beats away from where I was going to transition. So I had it up, and then what I did was, as I was putting down my volume of the first track, I was adjusting the low frequency of my second track, so that at that point where the transition is happening, my bass line of my second track would emerge into the mix, while my first track kind of faded out through an echo effect. As you guys heard in the second track that I mixed in the break of it, so after the intro, it was pretty much just a couple sounds, as you guys hear in here. It's not really melodic heavy. There isn't, you know, a huge sub impact and a huge sweep happening, and, you know, vocals and chords and arps and pads and everything happening at once. It's really, really minimalist in the style of this music. So obviously echo really helps in that way. Also, another thing that you can do is auto beat loop it out and then transition it out like that. But essentially this is the way to do it. Alright guys, so I'm going to be showing you another example. These two tracks are at 170 BPM. Same genre, mid-tempo, new house, whatever you want to call it. So same concept. These tracks are just at 170 BPM, so a little bit different. But the concept behind it is the exact same. So just like what happened in my second track in the first transition that I showed you guys, where the intro for it was really kind of, you know, not really significant in any part, like especially the low frequency, it was just really kind of like an ARP or just some simple sounds. Same thing is in the second track that I have over here. So I'm just gonna play it for you guys. So as you can hear, it's a really, really simple sort of ARP that's going on, and then as it moves on, it starts going into a more kind of bass heavy melody and a build up into the eventual drop. And then for my first track that I have playing over here, as you can hear, very bass heavy. So essentially I don't really have to cut out the low frequency from my first track, since there's, you know, virtually no low frequency in the second track that I'm mixing in. It still decreases the volume. I can just have a really, really quick transition, and I can basically, I don't really even need to adjust the low frequency for my second track, since it isn't really bass heavy. I can just slide up the volume to a level where I'm comfortable at, so that it doesn't really overpower the first track that's playing. So I'm just gonna be starting this track with the build up. Both are at 170. So I have both my tracks beat matched, same tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, play. Beat matching. Not going to touch the low frequency knob. Putting up the volume. Echo. Basically, you guys get the idea. Sometimes you might need to, you know, put down the lower frequency. If you're mixing in something like the second part of the intro into, you know, the ending of the drop of the first track, then obviously you're going to need to put down so the two basses don't really fight over the mix. But if you're going from just, you know, the first little bit of the intro, and then when it moves into the heavier part of, you know, the intro, the second part of the intro, if you want, you can echo out already at that point and then just switch into the more heavy bass line of the second track from there. So it just depends on your preference of how you're mixing. This really makes sure to keep your low frequencies from fighting in the mix, because it's super important that way so that it doesn't sound muddy, and generally just have fun. This is a genre that you can definitely drop mix with and do all sorts of tricks with. But this is probably the easiest method of mixing this kind of music. It's not really different from any other one except for just focusing on the lower frequencies, and then obviously adding some sort of echo effects, some spiral effects, something to kind of fill up the transition, because without it, it sounds a little bit bare. But of course, that's what the beat effects are used for, so we can kind of amplify the mix and add something to it so it'll sound a lot better when we do these sorts of transitions. So anyways, hope you guys enjoy this tutorial. Keep an eye out for the mid-tempo mix that I'm going to be putting out, so you guys can see how my mixing is and how the whole technique works, and I'll show you guys the overtop view of that. So stay tuned for that video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.